All right, so multiplying and dividing we're going to do together because the rule is the same. Multiplying and dividing real numbers, if they have the same sign, the answer is positive. If they have different signs, the answer is negative. End of story. I find adding and subtracting for everything more complicated than multiplying and dividing. They usually have pretty straightforward rules. So when you're talking about having the same sign, 4 times 8 is 32. Because it's positive times a positive, the answer is positive. Negative 4 times negative 8 is 32. Negative times a negative, also a positive. If the numbers have different signs, then the product of the two numbers will have, well, if the, sorry, let me say it again. If the product of two numbers of different signs is negative. So if I have two numbers with different signs, it comes out as a negative answer. My brain has stopped working. Negative 8 times positive 9 is negative 72. Positive 8 times negative 9, also negative 72. The other rule that you have to know is that anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So let's try a few. Negative 3 times negative 9. 3 times 9 is 27. A negative times a negative is a positive. Next one. 6 times 9 is 54. A positive times a negative is a negative. Now, if multiplying doesn't come as quickly to you, don't be afraid to use a calculator, but also in your formula sheets, there is a multiplication table. So if you're a visual learner and you're like, the more times you see it on paper, you might remember, that might be a good way to go. And again, plugging it in, you would just go 6 times 9 negative, or negative 9 depending on your calculator, and the answer comes out as a negative. If I'm going to do negative 0.5 times negative 0.4, I am horrible at multiplying decimals. I know there's a rule that if it's a tenth times or one decimal times one decimal, the answer will have two decimals. I never trust myself, so get used to using a calculator. 0.5 negative times 0.4 negative equals, it comes out positive. So a negative times a negative is a positive. 0.4 times 0.5 is 0.2. Lastly, 7 times 0, anything times 0 is 0. Dividing is the same rule, so if there's two signs are the same, the answer is positive, signs are different, answer is negative. The only thing you have to know with division is that it can be written in different ways. So if you have something divided by something, like 45 divided by 3, it can be written with a line between them, like a fraction, so 45 divided by 3, which is the same as writing 45 with the division symbol by 3. But here's the tricky one. It can also be 45 times, wait for this wording, the reciprocal of the divisor. So when you're looking at division, the numerator or the top of the fraction is called the dividend, and the bottom of the fraction or denominator is called the divisor. So if you want to write division as a multiplication, you take the reciprocal, so you flip the bottom number and change it to a multiplication. So all we're showing you here is that 45 over 3 is 45 divided by 3, which is 45 times a third. And the moral of this story is anything on the bottom of a fraction, even if it says multiplication in the question, like 45 times a third, this is 45 divided by 3. And that is a huge skill to have. Okay, the other thing that you should be aware of is zeros again. So 0 divided by anything is 0, but 3 divided by 0 will give you an error in your calculator, and that's because it's undefined, meaning it doesn't actually exist. Okay, and the reason why is that if you have 3 of something and you try to break it up into no groups, if you have something, it can't disappear. So it just doesn't make sense mathematically. But let's look at the questions you'll be asked. You'll be asked something like negative 12 divided by 4. Okay, well that is a negative divided by a positive, which is a negative, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. For this one, I have a negative divided by a negative, so it'll be a positive answer, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. I should also point out this would be the same as negative 8 times negative a quarter, right? And this would be the same as negative 12 times a quarter. And I'm just showing you that now. It won't matter so much until we do the fraction section, but the more you see it and get used to it, the better. 5 divided by 0, you're going to answer undefined. And 0 divided by 7, you're going to answer 0. And that's it. That is multiplying and dividing real numbers.